A century before the Sacklers pushed opioids into millions of American homes, another family already perfected the business of addiction. They didn't run a pharmaceutical company covered in glossy ads. They ran a global narcotics empire backed by the might of the British flag. They turned India into a drug plantation. They turned China into a nation of addicts. They turned the British Empire into the world's first narco-state. And they made billions doing it. This is the hidden financial history of the Sassoon Dynasty, the respectable family whose fortune was built on suffering. The empire that proved addiction is the most profitable industry in the world. What they created didn't disappear. It evolved. Stay with me. Because modern Big Pharma is still using the exact same playbook. Different century. Same strategy. History doesn't just repeat, it reinvents its dealers. A century before American headlines warned about opioid addiction, another dynasty had already mastered the business model behind it. They did not rely on modern medicine or pharmaceutical patents. They built wealth from a substance far more ancient and dangerously effective: opium. The Sassoon family turned it into the most profitable commodity on the planet. Their success reshaped economies, toppled governments, and cemented the British Empire as the richest global power the world had ever seen. People hear the phrase narco-state and think of cocaine cartels in the jungle. The uncomfortable truth is that the original narco-state was not hiding in the shadows. It wore red military coats, sailed battleships, collected taxes, and toasted the Queen. The British Empire got rich selling addiction. The Sassoons became its most trusted dealers. The story begins in confusion and danger. David Sassoon, a Jewish merchant in Baghdad, is forced to flee persecution. He escapes with his family, reputation in ruins, future uncertain. He arrives in Bombay with only his trading instincts and a hunger for security. What he discovers in India is a business opportunity that feels almost unreal. The East India Company is cultivating opium on fertile Indian soil, yet the real money is waiting across the sea. China has a population desperate to escape daily hardship. One taste of opium hooks the brain. Every sale creates a guaranteed customer. It is not demand, it is dependency. It is wealth that multiplies itself. This is where the transformation begins, from refugee to drug baron. From hunted outsider to power broker welcomed into British drawing rooms. The Sassoons learn that addiction is not a crisis for everyone. It is a gold mine. Empires do not expand only through armies and flags. They expand through control of human desire. Stay with me, because the rise that follows is darker than anything you expect from a respectable family portrait. History's most profitable business was built on pain. The Sassoons simply perfected it. David Sassoon did not look like the man who would change world history. He was not a general commanding armies or a king seated on a throne. He was a displaced merchant forced to abandon his home in Baghdad after political persecution turned his family into targets. Exile usually destroys a legacy. In his case, it forged one. When he reaches Bombay in the early 1800s, he arrives in a port city exploding with possibility. The British Empire controls it, trade moves through it. Fortune favors anyone bold enough to see what others ignore. David is one of those rare minds. He sees not just markets, but weaknesses. He understands that wealth does not come from selling what people want. True wealth comes from selling something people cannot live without. He studies the opium trade like a scientist studying a formula. He realizes it is not a product. It is a system. Grow in India. Ship to China. Convert dependency into endless revenue. David builds warehouses along Bombay's docks. He hires thousands of workers. He organizes shipping fleets and distribution channels with British cooperation. While other merchants chase silk and tea, the Sassoons quietly move the one commodity guaranteed to grow its demand. The profits pile higher every year. It is economic gravity. Addiction pulls money upward. The transformation is shocking. The family who once hid from oppression now becomes untouchable. British aristocrats begin inviting the Sassoons into their salons. Royal officials seek their partnerships. The very empire that once viewed Jewish merchants as outsiders now welcomes them as essential financial allies. Nothing washes away prejudice faster than profit. By the late 19th century, the Sassoon name rings out from Bombay to London. They purchase mansions, they establish banks, they marry into elite British circles. Newspapers call them the Rothschilds of the East, the ultimate symbol of power. Yet beneath that social shine sits the truth. The family's rise rests entirely on a drug engineered to control bodies and capture minds. Their success is not luck. It is a business model rooted in dependency. And just when you think the story couldn't get any more ruthless, China fights back. The opium business was not accidental success. It was engineered. The Sassoons recognized something the world had never seen before. A global supply chain designed not to satisfy desire, but to exploit biology itself. They understood that opium did not just soothe pain, it rewired the brain. Once a person used it, the body demanded more. That guarantee of return customers became the foundation of a growing empire. India became the heart of production. The East India Company forced farmers to abandon food crops so they could plant opium poppies. Families went hungry so the fields could feed addiction overseas. The Sassoons stepped into the perfect position. They turned this misery into a factory system. Processing centers, storage warehouses, armed guards. They built a logistics network that made narcotics feel like legitimate commerce. China was the target, millions of potential customers, a population already strained by poverty and political instability. Opium offered escape, a small moment of calm, a false relief. The Sassoons did not need to market it. Once the first purchase was made, the drug handled all future sales. British warships patrolled the sea routes to guarantee profits. No pirate or rival would interfere with what had become one of the empire's most valuable exports. Revenue soared so high that taxes on opium helped fund British expansion. Every new colony, every new fortress, every new gun, the empire was literally built on narcotics money. By the mid-1800s, opium addiction in China reached horrifying levels. Officials begged the British to intervene. They pleaded to stop the trade before society collapsed. The Sassoons shrugged. A suffering China was a wealthy Sassoon business. Addiction was not a side effect of the product. It was the product. China tried to enforce bans. It seized and destroyed opium shipments. It insisted foreign traders respect its laws. The Sassoons stood behind the British government, which had a different answer. Rather than halting the drug trade, the most powerful empire on earth decided to go to war in order to keep selling poison. The opium wars were coming, and the Sassoons were about to rise even higher on the smoke of a collapsing nation. China tried to break free. Government forces seized opium stockpiles and demanded foreign traders stop flooding their ports with poison. There was a brief moment when justice felt possible. The Sassoons faced the first real threat to their empire. Their profits depended on China staying addicted. A crackdown meant the money machine might finally stall. Britain refused to let that happen. The British Empire was addicted too, not to the drug itself, to the revenue. So the empire made a violent decision that exposed its true priorities. Rather than ending the opium trade, it sent warships. Cannons, troops trained for conquest. The First Opium War exploded into history. Battles erupted along the Chinese coast. The British military hammered cities with devastating firepower. China's outdated armies stood no chance against modern weapons. Every surrender signed in smoke represented a victory not for honor, but for profit. The Sassoons watched from a safe distance. Their fortune grew with every defeated port. China lost. The Treaty of Nanking forced it to open more trade routes. It handed over Hong Kong, turning the island into a new global headquarters for the drug trade. What looked like diplomacy was actually business expansion written in legal ink. Profits surged again. Addiction spread even deeper through Chinese society. Families were destroyed. Workers collapsed in opium dens. The social toll was catastrophic. Yet the Sassoons expanded faster than ever. They built banks, factories, real estate empires. They diversified into cotton and textiles, but opium always remained the financial engine underneath. The British government rewarded them with prestige, titles, political access, partnerships with aristocrats. Newspapers praised their philanthropy while ignoring the suffering they financed. History polished their reputation while their ledgers recorded the truth. China tried again years later, launching the Second Opium War to reclaim control. Britain doubled down once more. Guns protected drugs. The Sassoons' business was now backed by the world's most powerful navy. A refugee family had risen to the level of nations. Their money could push governments to war. Their product could weaken civilizations. Their influence reached across continents. Yet even drug empires must eventually disguise their origins. Power invites scrutiny. Respect demands a clean image. The Sassoons were ready to wash the blood from their hands, at least in the history books. Empires know one truth. Fortunes built in the shadows do not stay hidden forever. The Sassoons understood that addiction had paid for their power. Millions in China were trapped in dependence. Families ruined, a nation weakened. And every ounce of misery had a number next to it in the Sassoon account books. They needed transformation, not financial, reputational. So the family embarked on a new campaign. Philanthropy hospitals. libraries, schools, cultural institutions, landmarks that still bear their name in cities from Bombay to London. These gifts crafted a narrative. The Sassoons were no longer drug merchants. They were benefactors, patrons of society, builders of progress. The strategy worked. Public memory is selective. People see the beautiful buildings, the charitable foundations, the smiles at ribbon cuttings. The opium fields fade into footnotes. History focuses on the success, not the suffering that created it. While statues celebrated their new identity, the addiction economy they pioneered did not disappear. Other companies watched the model succeed. They realized dependency is the most reliable revenue stream on Earth. If your product controls the brain, your profits control the market. Fast forward to the modern era. The opioid crisis. Prescription drug epidemics. Families torn apart in countries that once pointed fingers at China. Corporations earning billions by selling relief that becomes captivity. Courts now reveal internal documents showing that some pharmaceutical executives knew exactly what they were creating, lifelong customers disguised as patients. The parallels are unsettling. A family builds immense wealth selling addiction. Public outrage rises. A fortune is quickly washed through cultural generosity. Respectability returns. The cycle resets with a new name. The Sassoons invented the blueprint. The Sacklers only updated the brand. This is not just a financial history, it is a warning. Every time a product offers quick comfort, someone measures how long it will keep us coming back. Addiction is not a crisis for those who profit from it. It is a business model perfected over centuries. The British Empire may no longer rule the seas. The Sassoon Dynasty may no longer control global trade. Yet the system they created still thrives, hidden behind glossy logos, legal paperwork, smiling executives. History does not bury its darkest lessons. It simply reinvents its dealers.